Hi and welcome to Mad About Gardening. This is our August episode. In this programme I am going to be harvesting some potatoes.
I'm going to be taking some cuttings of our Sedum Matrona.
I'm also going to be planting some plants in the borders, as well as giving you my usual garden tour.
And I'm also going to be planting some plants in our perennial border and giving you a little tour on our vegetables as well. So, hope you enjoy it.
I've really been looking forward to this, harvesting our potatoes. Now, this is a variety called Pentland Javelin, and we've grown these before. Now, we planted them 3 months ago, so that was back in May, and they flowered. And to be honest with you, we really enjoyed the flowers. We always do. They look fantastic and they're a welcome addition to the garden. And as you can see, they are now ready to be harvested. We grew them in these beautiful compost bags, therefore recycling something that we'd normally, put to one side. We've put them to good use, filled them full of compost, planted the seed potatoes. Well, we didn't fill them full of compost. We put compost about that much in the bottom of each bag. There were 3 bags altogether, and we simply planted them. Whenever the green of the new growth, fresh growth, came through the soil, we would do something that you call earthing up. So what we do is we cover that layer so there's no green to be seen. Then the next layer will come, so in other words, the growth will come through the compost again, and we will simply earth up again. And we kept repeating that process until they got to near top of the bags. Then what happened, we allowed them to continue, do the thing, flower, and I just think they've looked really, really well. They've only started to look straggly like this really in the last week, I'd say. Possibly a little more, but now they're definitely ready to be harvested. And this is a variety, if you've not grown Pentland Javelin before, we really recommend that you do, because we think that you will love it. It's just great to be out here now doing this. I've got my little kneeler, and we have 2 of these, one for Paul, one for myself, and they're so useful in the garden, especially when it's been raining like it had this morning. So I had a little bit of rain, which is nice for August. Now, what I'm going to do first, before we start, I'm going to use my bucket. So before I start tipping these out and dealing with all this, what I'm going to do is chop them back first. So I'm going to take each stem right back, and we'll pop these to one side. There's nothing better than growing your own produce. There's really not. And my granddad used to do it. He had a whole side of his garden filled with growing veg, but Paul's really got into this, and potatoes and things have been growing for years, many years. And I know my dad used to, it's the only thing he did grow actually was potatoes. He wasn't much of a gardener really, but he did like growing things, and one of the things that he did grow were potatoes, and he would bring them into the house, and we'd have chips. That's what he used to do with them. So yeah, so fond memories of that. And now, the moment of truth. Let's see what's inside this wonderful bag. Hopefully, we're going to get a bounty. We're going to get a bumper crop. I know we did last year, we did really, really well, because I think, if I remember correctly, things were not looking that great. I thought, oh, there's not that many. And as we got deeper, there were loads. So I was really impressed. Now, what I'm going to do is simply, I'm going to take Mr. Slug and just pop him over there, throw him over there. I'm going to literally tip the bag into the bucket, and the reason for this is the lawn. I don't want to get compost all over the lawn. It was mown yesterday, actually. So, and it's looking good, so I don't want to damage the lawn. So I'm going to tip these up, and I can stay where I am as well. Just tip the bag, just place it down like that, like so, into the bucket. Be careful not to trap the rim inside, and we can just tease the compost out like that. Now look at this. I can already see lots of wonderful potatoes there. So I'll empty my little basket of the soil that I've just put in there, the compost. Now, look at this. Woohoo! These are amazing. These are absolutely amazing. Look at that. I think we're going to beat last year, to be honest. Especially as we've got 3 bags of them as well. 3 bags of these beauties. Wow. So it's just a question of feeling your way through the compost. Feeling your way through and taking out each of the potatoes. It makes it so much easier than this and saves on mess. So they'll be in layers. You'll find them in groups as you go down. So they will be in layers. So that's the first layer, I think. So what I need to do now is go on to the next one. Yep, there. Look at this for harvest. This is amazing. And to be honest with you, it's what we expected. We expect a good crop. Expect it and good things will come. It's just going to be great to eat these. And we're going to have lots of meals from these ones. They're going to be fantastic. So I'm going to keep digging deeper, that's the thing. Buckets, probably could have done with 2 buckets really and done half and half, but it's okay. Ah, look, some beauties right down at the bottom there. So keep going. Don't be afraid to get right down in there because you need to in order to get these beauties out. And I think, to be honest with you, this is only in the centre there. I think that's it, which is pretty good. That's not bad at all, because that's out of 1 bag. And just double checking, just in case, because I don't want to leave anything to chance. I know we'll find it when we dispose of the compost anyway, so it's not a problem. But yeah, I think that's it. That's everything, which is great. Look at these. Nothing beats homegrown potatoes, absolutely nothing. And that goes with everything else as well, fruit, veg, everything. Nothing beats it. All this magnificent compost is going to go back into the garden. So wherever we need a little top up of soil levels, that's where it will go. Obviously we'll get rid of all these bits of root and stems from the potatoes, but that's a really good harvest. I'm so pleased with that. There's 3 bags in total. Now, we're not going to harvest the other 2 bags today. And the reason for that is we can be enjoying these, then we'll go back to the other bags, 1 bag at a time. So we're having that succession and we're not digging them all out and then them going bad on us. The last thing we want is not to get through these beauties, because I know they're going to taste magnificent. So yeah, we'll take them 1 bag at a time and we will literally eat our way through each bag. Now we're going to go over to Paul, who's taking some cuttings from his Sedum Matrona.
We're certainly going to enjoy those potatoes. Thanks so much, Andrew, for harvesting those. So onto our sedum. Now this is Sedum Matrona, and this is a beautiful dark-leaved sedum. And there's just some flowers that are just about to pop and come out. But what I'm going to try and do, now this is something I've never really tried before, I'm going to do 2 types of cuttings. One is going to be a leaf cutting and the other is going to be a stem cutting. So I've never tried leaf cuttings before from sedum. I have done some stem cuttings before and always had success. So the leaf cutting is going to be a bit of a trial and error really. So first of all, I've got a tray and I've just filled it with multi-purpose compost that's got a lot of added grit. Now I've been doing my research, so apparently what I need to be looking for is smallish leaves, and when I detach them from the main stem I'm wanting to get a little bit of that stem with the leaf. So I don't need to be using secateurs, I just need to be using my hands for this job. So I'm going to be looking for some inconspicuous leaves that I can find, and I'm just going to literally detach them. So let's try and find some nice healthy ones, being very careful not to damage or just damage one there. That's not good, let's get rid of that one. So I'm trying to find smallish ones. Now there's one right at the bottom, so I'm just going to pull, and I'm just going to try and get some of that material from the stem along with that leaf, and then using that I'm just going to dip that into some hormone rooting powder. Just tap the rest off, and then place that directly into one of these cells, just firming that in and just crunching that compost around it. So in theory it's as simple as that. So let's go and get some more, and there we go. So that's another one. It's fairly biggish. I'm popping that in the hormone rooting powder and then straight into the compost. Like I said, I've never done this before, never done leaf cuttings from sedum, so it's going to be interesting to see if I can get it to work. Let's pull it off. Hormone rooting powder, and then straight in. And see if we can get some more. Try that. So because I'm using the leaves, what I would normally do with sedum is divide it in the spring. But because I'm using the leaves, obviously the plants are full of leaves, so that gives you the potential of making so many more plants. Many more than what you would do if you were trying to divide it. So that's the advantage of doing it this way. So that's my 6 done. So now I'm going to go on to some stem cuttings. Now with regards to stem cuttings, what I'm going to have to look for is, because all of these shoots have now got flowers on, what I'll be looking for is probably some of these side shoots. I won't be touching these main stems because I want to keep these so we can enjoy them in the garden. So I'm just going to be looking at these side shoots. So something like this one here, and I'm going to detach the whole thing, and it's going to be just underneath the leaf joint. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking at. And firstly I'm going to take off that flowering bit. Now I can make 3 different cuttings from this stem. So I've got the bit below the leaf joints there, the bit below that leaf joint there, and the bit below that leaf joint there. So in that one stem I can make 3 cuttings. So I'm looking at about that kind of size, and that's one. Then I'm going to go further up and take the next one, and then the last one is going to be there. So that's 3 cuttings, and again we just dip them into some hormone rooting powder, and again some gritty compost. I'm just going to try and firm this in, and because these leaves are quite big I'm just going to give that a bit of a chop. Firm it in around, and then with these smaller ones they can just go in as they are. probably get some more. So I'll try and find one that's not going to be missed too much. So there's another one there. So that's my stem. I'm going to take out this flowering bit. So I'm going to cut there. And then I'm going to cut there. Get rid of that bit. So we've got two nice pieces of cut in there. Dip them into hormone rooting powder. Pop them in. And because these are succulents, these leaves do hold a lot of moisture already. I kind of feel that I don't want to be putting a plastic bag over these that I would normally do with cuttings, because I don't want to have potential of them rotting off. So for both of these, I'm going to keep them well watered, making sure the compost is evenly moist, but I'm not going to cover them with any kind of covering. I'm going to place them inside, so on the kitchen window ledge, and that should hopefully give enough warmth for them to begin to root. If you do have a propagator, a heated one, if you do put them in that will make it even better, because it will root a lot quicker. But I'm hoping the heat from the window in the kitchen will be sufficient enough. I've never really tried leaving these outdoors to root, so I'm not sure on the success rate. Give it a try, see what happens. But I'm going to, for this purpose of this exercise, I am going to take them indoors. Now the other thing I'm going to do is a little experiment. So I've taken some leaf cuttings and some stem cuttings and directly put them into the compost for growing on. But there is another school of thought, and that is when you're doing a stem cutting, you're meant to leave the stem a little while for it to heal. So that's just like a little bit of drying out, if you like, on the stem before you actually place it into the compost. Now that is also meant to help to prevent it from rotting. So I'm going to give that a try. So with regards to this one, I'm just going to find a couple of nice stems that I can use. So that's one, and that's two. So what I'm going to do with this is prepare the cutting like you would. So I'm going to get the cutting material that I'm looking for. Take out the top. I'm trying to remember which way up these are. And what I'm going to do with these is just leave them out in the sun just for a few hours, and that will just help for the stem itself to callus over at the bottom, and then I'm going to then put them into the compost. Now this is just a test to see if the ones that are directly put into compost root any better or worse than the ones that I'm just leaving to callus over. So that's this bit done. I'm really looking forward to these, because August is the month when these come into their own. These are going to be a beautiful pink. And if you've already noticed as well, we have added some more of the Echinacea white swan into this border. So that's going to flow through this border there. You're going to have these lovely sedums. We do have some scabious as well. That's been flowering for quite a while, so that's growing on really well. And these beautiful drumstick alliums. The month of July was really the month for these, so they're just going over now, but I'm going to leave those alone because they produce the most beautiful seed heads, so they'll carry us through the autumn and into the winter. So now I'm going to pass you back to Andrew, who's going to be planting some plants in the rockery and in another border.
I'm really pleased about this because I'm going to get to be planting up some digitalis that have been grown by Paul from seed. Now these are Excelsior mixed, and we love our digitalis. We love foxgloves. Who doesn't, when you see bees going inside those little booths, buzzing away, happy, enjoying all that lovely pollen. Now, what I'm going to do is take this old foxglove out, because he's had his day. He's flowered beautifully for us, but I'm going to get these 6 in this space to create a real fantastic, really fantastic effect for next year. So I'm going to dig him out and just feel a little bit of rain in the air. I was just thinking then, is it really going to rain on me? And then I realised, yes it is. So here we go. Let's try and take him out. And he should come out quite easily really. And what I do is, I always try and do this, I always have done, try and bang as much soil off as possible, because the last thing we want to be doing is taking stuff out and constantly replenishing. Use what we've got. So whilst we'll use some compost around this area later as a top dressing, the last thing we want to do is lose all the soil that we've got. So what I'm going to do is say that that's pretty much it. Take that little piece out, smooth over the area, which is quite easy to do. Make sure we get rid of all of him. Yeah. Because he's been established for a while now, for the last 2 years, he's the area's firmed up a little bit. He's had a good root run as well. So there you go. Now, I can't wait to see the results from these. Look at this, look what you can do. And it's really not too late to sow digitalis seeds now. So you can sow your foxgloves right now in August and get them growing, ready for flowering next year. There's still time. If you press on with that now, you can still make the deadline. Now, because obviously these are biennial, which means the first year they will look something like this. So when they've been grown from seed, they will look something like this. And it's only in the second year that they will flower. So it doesn't matter if you sowed these in spring and planted them out, they're still not going to flower this year. They wouldn't have flowered. They will be flowering next year. Okay, so I'm going to pop some of these in. So I'm just going to release them from the little compartments. Let's get these into the ground. Tease them out, look at that. Really fantastic roots going on. It's so lovely to see them happy. Love seeing plants happy. Love seeing everyone happy. Anyway, let's get these in. That's a root from the past. So what we're going to do is leave him there and just pop our plant around him. Now these next year, they're going to be stunning. They really are. You have to be careful with this as well, because when you're doing this, that's why I'm being so, I look a little bit haphazard, but I'm trying to be careful not to damage the trays, because we want to use these again and again and again. And the last thing we want to do is be damaging and getting more in. So there you go. It's a fine line between not damaging the plant and not damaging the trays as well, because we do want to continually use them. Now I know you're making a little home there, but I'm going to have to move you along because we need to get these in. It's just great to be outside again. I mean, after all the rain that we had in July, to be honest with you, towards the end of July it was quite a washout really, so it's just great to be, and quite cold as well compared to what we've been used to, so it's just great to be back outside again. And it is, despite this little, it's spitting, it's not really raining, it's actually quite, it's much warmer anyway than it has been, so we're quite happy about that. But these are going to look great. I might not be able to, we'll see, we'll do it, I think we will. Now That's it, because we want to create an effect, and this planting en masse always gives you that effect. You know, if you put just one of something in, it's great, it does what it does, but when you do this, everything's compact, everything's close together, and they flower and they create a really stunning effect, and that's what we're after. We're after creating a statement. And as I say, I will top this up at a later stage with some compost. I'll just give them a top dressing of it. Normally we dig it all in, but I'm going to give them a top dressing. I'm going to put this one here, and then he completes the ensemble. It gives us that stunning effect of so many planted en masse like that. And you might think, oh, they're a little close together. They're going to be great, trust me. Now, onto the next bed. We took drastic action with regards to the Photinia. Now, it was dominating the space. It really was. And blocking the view from the summer house to the house and looking along the rest of the garden. You know, you'd be sat in the summer house, you couldn't see the rest of the garden because of it. And vice versa, if you're that end of the other end of the garden, you can't see all these beautiful flowers around us. So we took drastic action. We pruned it right back. It will survive, it will be okay, it's still alive, but the space has benefited from it. The garden looks so much better, even more beautiful, and we get to enjoy all the wonderful plants that we're growing. Now, pieced in this space, I should say pieced into the space, are some of the digitalis that we've just been planting. So the Excelsior mixed, and we've got our lovely Aquilegias as well that have been grown from a plant in the garden. So all these have been grown from seed, and they've been strategically placed around this area. And the idea is that next year they will come poking through. So when we get some growth back on the Photinia, we'll have Aquilegias and we'll have Foxgloves coming through these tall spires, tall slender spires, and it will look just perfect. But you can see already by looking at this, before, if you remember, if you look at our other videos, big, massive, huge bush, to now everything's in perfect order. You can see the garden and you can enjoy it, and that's what gardening's about. That's what being in a garden is about, to be able to enjoy it. Now, let's plant these into the ground. Now, I know there's a lot of roots along here, but that's fine. There's enough soil depth for them, and the roots will go down into the ground and establish. They'll be okay. And Aquilegias, if you've never grown Granny's bonnet, it used to be called, my nan used to say Granny's bonnet. So Aquilegia vulgaris, or Aquilegia, literally, if you've never grown them, please do, because in spring they are such a welcome addition to the garden. They are so much appreciated. They look gorgeous. These beautiful droplet flowers, absolutely gorgeous. We love them. We've been growing them for years. In Sheffield, in our cottage garden, we used to have something we called Aquilegia Walk, and it was literally a pathway, a long pathway, and all along the edges were Aquilegias. Some of them we planted, but some had been there for many years, and they just look divine. They're self-seeded and they look fantastic. So I'm going to get these in anyway. That's the thing with me, I like to talk, so if I'm not careful, I'll end up talking and there'll be no work being done. So I need to get these in. And the bark that you see, or the stumps that you see in this area, actually belong to a beautiful apple tree that used to be for many decades, many years ago in this space. And I bet it was stunning. I think I can remember it looking across the gardens when I was a kid. These stumps are home to so many insects, but one of my favourites is the woodlice, and they are literally underneath each one of these that have made their own little homes, and they're safe there. It's just wonderful to see when you see the odd one coming out. It's just so nice. So I'm going to keep on planting. I'm being careful not to disturb the stumps, because that's the last thing we want to do. And it just shows, or should I say, this just shows what you can do in a space. You really can turn things around and make things look better. Just because something's always been there, it doesn't mean to say that you can't make improvements. And this is going to be one of those improvements. And I just think it's perfect. It looks so much better. It's great to sit in the summer house and actually look out onto the garden and be able to see the whole garden instead of it being hidden. It's so much better. Ah, the sun's come out for me. Right, so I'll work my way around this way. There's a lot of good compost here because I tipped a huge bag along when I planted these geraniums a while back. And so these are doing really well. I love it when the sun's shining like this, it makes me feel so good. August is a fantastic month in the garden. One of my favourites, to be honest with you, because you have so many of the vibrant plants now coming into their own, and that's what I like. I love the vibrant colours. And so I've had all the pleasure of all the other plants coming through and enjoying those, and it's almost like, for me personally, the best is yet to come as well. So you have a whole year of anticipation, and I love that. Absolutely love it. Now I think I planted all those in. There's probably space for one or two more along this area here, but I think that looks so much better now. That really does. And I know they're close up, the digitalis, but they'll be close up to the shrub, but they'll be fine. They will create their own home, find their own way, and they will enjoy it. Don't forget, it's going to take a while for the Photinia to come back and to begin to leaf up, green up. But when it does, these flowers will push the way forward and they'll just create the most amazing effect. So next year, this area is going to look fantastic. That's the thing with gardening, there's so many opportunities. You do one job that needs doing, such as pruning, and you create opportunities by doing that. And I think that's the wonderful thing about it. I love it, absolutely love it. The possibilities are endless. Now over to Paul, who's going to be doing some planting just in the border behind me here.
This part of the border would have looked absolutely beautiful, but unfortunately these Aquilegias have been ravaged too much by the slugs and they're just not happy. I'm going to try and save them. They are still alive. I'm going to just put them into containers, but I do have some stunning plants to replace them with. So first I'm just going to dig them out, and as you can see they are still alive. It's just that every time they do get going, the slugs come in and get to them first. And the trouble is, July was so wet and we spent a lot of time away at Tatton Flower Show, and obviously didn't have as much time to be monitoring the garden itself and making sure these were slug free. But they are still alive and I will try and grow them on into containers. But it's given us a wonderful opportunity to try something different. And we're still going to stick with the theme of yellow. So we're keeping that theme going. And we've tried all kinds of things with this. We even tried the wool pellets, which the slugs are not meant to like, crouching over, going over, and that didn't work. So I think the slugs have won this particular battle, but hopefully they won't have won the war. So I've got some lovely space now to be planting some new plants, which hopefully the slugs will leave alone. So these particular plants are a beautiful daisy, and it's a Leucanthemum called Izabel. So it's Leucanthemum Sweet Daisy Izabel. And these, I've chosen specifically yellow because I wanted that contrast between this lovely pentstemon, and I do think that does it. They haven't got the same flower shape as the Aquilegia, which is that nice flat flower head, but I do think these will work. So I'm going to get these in. And there's just 3 of them. I'm going to start with the one at the back first. And this is a nice sunny position, so these should love it here. Got a really nice root ball. So that's the first one in, and as you can see already, it does look quite stunning. The soil here is very free draining. It does have quite a lot of gravel already in it, so these should like it and settle in really good. And these should provide flowers all through the summer. And then the final one, just in this front bit here. And as with when you're planting any containerised plant, you want to make sure that your planting depth is the same as the pot in which it was growing. So you want to grow top of the soil in your border needs to be the top of where the pot was. And I think that looks really beautiful. Now, as far as I'm aware, Leucanthemums don't have the same attraction to slugs as what Aquilegia has. So I do hope we're going to get some success with this one. We have got the white Leucanthemum on the other side of the garden that comes up year after year, and that's never affected by the slugs. So on that token, I'm hoping that these are going to be fine. But as you can see, that beautiful contrast between these lovely tubular bells, this is pentstemon garnet, compared to this beautiful yellow daisy. So just moving along, we do have another gap that we just need to fill. So these will get put into containers, and we'll try and survive. We'll try and get them to survive away from the slugs. So just moving over here. And we've already just placed these plants on the ground. Now we do have 2, but we'll probably get away with just the 1 because these are very sprawly. And this is the well-known Geranium Rozanne. And this has the most beautiful blue flowers. And as you can see from its habit, it likes to sprawl around and mingle with other plants. And this is a sterile plant, so this will continue making these beautiful blooms all the way through the season. It is quite a later geranium to come out initially, so you're looking at maybe July time when it does start to flower. But once it does flower, it continues going until the frosts get it. So if we don't get a frost till October, November time, this will still be in flower. And it's a beautiful plant. And I think what I wanted here originally was the Nepeta. And we've moved the Nepeta around the garden and it keeps getting eaten. Even though we had the upturned hanging basket, although that was protecting the crown, the cats were still nibbling and preventing those flowers coming. So we've taken it out, we've moved it onto the rockery, and it's doing a very similar thing. The cats are still wanting to eat it. So unfortunately, I'm not sure what we're going to do with that. There are Nepetas that are less attractive to cats, which is the Grandiflora type. So it might just be a case of passing that on to somebody else who hasn't got a cat in the garden and getting a Grandiflora type of Nepeta and seeing if that works. Apparently, the oils in that are not as attractive to our feline friends. So with regards to this, I think one in this space is going to be sufficient. So I just need to dig a big enough hole. I'm just immersed in this ground here, and the smell of the foliage of this salvia is just dominating. It's beautiful. So geraniums are really unfussy plants. They tolerate most soils, whether they're heavy or light. But grown best, most of them do prefer full sun, or at least part sun. I would never try and grow this type of geranium in the shade. It just won't be happy. But there are some geraniums for shade, such as Geranium phaeum or Geranium nodosum, and we do grow those in the shade area towards the house. But this one will be basking in this beautiful sunshine that this area can give it. So I'm just placing that in. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit of a tease to get it growing where I want it. And what we did with this plant initially, as you saw, is we placed it on the ground and we've lived with it for a few days. We've been able to walk through the garden, look around, look at it from the house and just see how it looks. And it's really good when you're putting a new plant in the border to just place it in its pot and just see if you like the situation. Does it do what you want it to do? Sometimes you can be too hasty and just get a plant from wherever you buy it from, bung it in the garden into a space, and then a few days later you're thinking, do you know what, I don't really like the way that mingles with the plant next to it or the plant behind it. So it's a really good idea to, when you do buy plants, just put them in situ and just live with it for a few days, look at it from different angles, and then when you're very happy with it and you're certain it's going to be good where you're going to position it, then go ahead and plant. So we've been doing that with this, and this really does bring out the nice blue, and it will mingle, as you can see already, with all these beautiful plants. So its neighbouring plant is this salvia. This is Caradonna Pink Inspiration, so the nice pink spires. Some of these are going over now, but there are some still coming through. And this lovely magenta type of flower, which is the Stachys, and that's Stachys humolo. And that's just slightly going over now, but there are some flowers still on these lower branches. So that is all the planting done in this border. I'm now just going to pass you over to Andrew, who's going to give you a tour of the flower borders and show you some of the highlights of our borders in August.
I wanted to start my garden tour with the beautiful hydrangea Annabelle. She is such a specimen. I love the white flowers, perfect for any white garden or a garden that you just wish to plant something that makes you feel mellow, because this really does it for me. It makes me feel so relaxed. the succulent green foliage with that beautiful white. Those heads are absolutely amazing. I love them. And do you know what? She does need support. If you notice, look around the base there, look in the pot. We've got one of these plant supports, but it does its job and it helps her to stand upright, to stand erect and do what she's meant to do. And that is look beautiful. Now, follow me. I really want to show you something that we've talked about on other videos. We were talking about in the long border, planting in repetition. Now, if you remember, we had the phloxes and we started off with, at first, I think there was one, and then that was split into two. Then that went to 3 and 4. And now, look, we have the repetition going along. So as you follow me, we've got that beautiful repetition, that continuation. Also, 4 times the scent as well, because when you stand here and the sun's out, especially later on when the sun gets to all the phloxes, you will find, oh, this whole area is intoxicating, such a delicious scent. I love it. We're going to continue with the continuation with many of the plants that you see and know of from this border from previous videos. But there's an extra addition. Now this Rus, a beautiful tree, gorgeous tree. I always say Ross, it's Rus. It was in a pot. And it was at the other side of the garden, further towards the house. And it was in between ours and next doors. It was in a very small container, about that big. Now you imagine such a beautiful specimen being contained in such a small space. I was very sad about that from the second that we moved here. And I knew that it was only a matter of time before we could utilise space, and once we got everything in, that we could find the perfect place for him. This is, in my opinion, the perfect place. Now, Rus can grow into quite a big tree. I didn't want to put him at the edges like we did with Ben and Danny's tree, the prunus that we bought in memory of Ben and Danny, our cats. What I wanted to do was utilise this space and use it as a much smaller tree so we can have the height and the interest, but without it being too invasive, but without it being planted on the edge of the garden as well. The last thing you want to do is, you don't want to be planting big things in the middle of the garden, but you also don't want to be planting all that height on the edges and having no height further in from the borders of the garden as well. And this is an example of that. This is a perfect example of usage of that kind of height in this type of space, that long, narrow garden. And he will be perfect here. He really will. He does want underplanting. So at the moment, there's some pots placed down. Some of the plants that we already have, such as the phlox and the perennial wallflower, that those are placed there. That doesn't mean to say that they're going in. We're not sure what's going to go on with this yet, but we do need to continue the flow. The last thing we want to do under here is to create a whole new extra experience that's different from the rest of the border. That wouldn't make any sense. It's better if we have that continuation and try and bring as many plants from the other side of the border into this to underplant next to our strawberries that are coming back quite well. Right, if you follow me, there's something that I'm really interested in at this moment in time. Now, Persicaria, I'm going to show you in a little while. Persicaria and Plexicalis is the main one, and I'm going to show you him shortly. He's gorgeous. He's in the border. He's quite tall. He's doing great. But this Persicaria superba, I just think it is. It lives up to superba. I mean, come on, it is superb as well. But look at it. You know, I like the fact it is tiny. It is a Persicaria, but with a difference. It's small, it's compact, it's neat, it's a spreader. It's great for rockeries and great for any smaller spaces as well. You know, if you're not after too much height, this is the plant for you. So Persicaria superba. It's gorgeous and it spreads. If you notice, if you come a bit closer, what it does is it just spreads along. It grows stems, and then from the stems you end up with root. So like at one stage this was just a small clump. It spread along and look, firmly rooted. And here, if I just peel it back gently, you can see lots of roots on there too. That is the best. That is just an amazing plant and very, very garden worthy. Now we're going to move on. I love this. I love getting the opportunity to show you around the garden. I really do. This is the best bit for me. This is the most exciting bit. The tree that we planted in memory of our cat's son, Benny the Bengal, and also Danny, because we have his headstone behind as well. Look, it's doing great. It's enjoying the breeze. It's flopping all over the place. It's doing its thing. Its roots are establishing. They're going right there into the ground, anchoring it in. And this has been in now since it was last October. Not or thereabouts, not long after October, November. So this has been in for quite a while now, and it's doing really, really well. I can't wait for spring for that gorgeous scent from those amazing white flowers on this one. It's a prunus. It's lovely, but I love the glossy dark foliage. You can't beat it. We've got another welcome addition to the garden. We've called him Jerry. If you just noticed there, it's a lovely black and white cat who comes to visit us in the garden. He also comes in the summer house quite a bit as well. Jerry! He's happy behind the pots. Anyway, back to the planting. So we've got Persicaria and Plexicalis firetail. Now this is such a divine plant. I love the height. I love the fact that we have this beautiful echinopsis around it. There's a clump of 3 here, and it's growing through into the Persicaria. Now look at that. Look at the colour combination between the echinopsis and firetail, the Persicaria. That works. You want that in your garden. You want that kind of effect. They harmonise, they complement each other. They are a talking point. They're one of those things people will come into the garden and say, oh, wow, you know, what are those 2 plants? And that's what you want. Just seeing if, he's wandering around, our little friend. He wants to be a star. He's decided he wants to be the star of the show. He's wonderful. He's always back into the garden when we're gardening. He spends a lot of time here, and interestingly enough, he actually leaves the birds alone. So the birds come and feed at the table, and he just sits watching them. I think he's more interested in some of the mice that we have in the garden. I've never seen him touch one, but he just watches the birds and doesn't bother them, which is really, really nice for a cat, for our feline friends. That is very good cat. Now, next one, Lichnis coronaria. I've mentioned this before. If you've not grown this in your garden, please do. This was a plant, you've probably heard the story many times. If you watch some of our other videos, I tell you this story every time. I'll tell it to you again because I love a good chin wag. Now, this is a plant that I used to divide as a child and sell. One of the plants, there was 2, there was Thrift, so Armeria, and then there was this one, Lichnis coronaria. I used to divide and sell it to old ladies at the back of my mum's house. It was a terraced house, so in the back's there. I used to sell this plant just to gain money to buy other different plants, usually from Woolworths, because that was the only, we didn't really spend time going to garden centres and things like that, and there wasn't really the kind of thing that there are now, kind of thing. They were not everywhere like they are now. There's a few established ones, but we didn't really go to that. I think there was one cantilever garden centre that we used to go to sometimes. That was one, but really there wasn't the money for stuff like that anyway. So I used to improvise by selling plants, selling this beautiful plant to make money for more plants, and look at how that creates an effect as well. So that would go really lovely with the blue, certainly of what Paul's just planted here. So we've got the Geranium Rozanne, that with the blue goes really, really well. It also goes well next to, again, the Persicaria and Plexicalis firetail. Great combination going on there. I'm looking forward to this aster coming out when it does, because this is little Carlo, and this, when it comes out, will just be a mass of blue. It will be stunning. Loving the grasses at the back there. Also, look at the Crocosmia. Now this is interesting in the way that this was split by Paul last year. So it was divided, it was well looked after, and the corms were taken away, any of the old corms. There's a video that Paul does about that as well, so we'll link that. And this was divided. Now look at it, it's flowering. If you've got a Crocosmia that needs division, it's been in there for many, many years, take them out, remove the old corms from underneath, starting at the base, working your way up to the most recent one, plant them back in. They will work the business, honestly. They will do you a treat. They will thank you beyond belief. They will flower prolifically the following year. They will thank you for it. They need it. They need looking after these plants, and what a wonderful thing to do is to get them out, release all the past literally from them, put them back in and just see them flower, because they do. They're flowering their heads off. This is a really lovely variety. Another one of the firm favourites in the garden is Stipa tenuissima. Just look at that. All that seed will ultimately come away or blow away and create many more plants. They'll be growing in all the rocks and spaces. Anywhere they can grow, they will do. Something else, Echinacea. This Echinacea is one called Magnus. Now, doesn't it look divine? Next to the calendula, this one's called Indian Prince. Look at that deep colour. Oh, it's gorgeous. Indian Prince and the Agastache. You just look at how those plants go together. They really create this decking. They set it off. They make it look fantastic. You know, it's one of those things where you're in the garden all the time, and you're not focusing upon the beauty, you're focusing on the doing. As gardeners, that's what we do. It takes sometimes other people to come into the space, come into your garden and see the beauty that you've created and say, wow. And we really do get that effect, certainly from neighbours as well. Next door has said a few times, your garden is just beautiful, because we see the beauty, but at the same time we're too busy working to really appreciate it. But it's in moments like this, certainly during the garden tour, that I get to appreciate it, and this just does it for me. It's this time of year as well when all the vibrant colours are out, the kind of colours that I like, really doing it for me, definitely. We've got a buddleia over there in the background that's waiting to go into the ground. We've got Helenium, some more of the calendula Indian Prince there. And it's nice how Paul's put them in the same pots either side of the entrance to the summer house. That works really well. If you're trying to create an effect, you know, do that. 2 pots either side and have the same planting. It works. We've got lots of Verbena bonariensis poking its way through. Now, Verbena bonariensis is such a beautiful doer, and I like the scent from it. It's very light, but I really do like it, and I know the butterflies love it too. Phlox David is just about to flower. Now, this is one that I've recommended before many times. If you're going to buy a phlox, buy David. Once he's established, he will grow quite tall. Most gorgeous white flowers, very highly scented, a beautiful phlox. Please do buy it. We've also got some more of the phlox from the other border, from the long border here, and this is Phlox Spatsummer, and it's a really great doer. The scent, again, exquisite. It really is. I'm loving this. My trusty old friend, the fuchsia. Now, this is the fuchsia that you used to see in gardens many years ago. Now, I created a video about this some time ago, many months ago, and we'll put the link so that you can see that video, because it's really interesting. I think you do not see this enough, and it's such an important nectar source, not just for bees but also for the moths. You think about the moths. There's so much planting in this garden that is suitable for moths, and moths really do like this one. So my advice, see the link, watch the video and plant more of this beautiful fuchsia, because I think at one time, you very rarely see it now, people were digging it out of the gardens. I think it should be put back in. It's traditional, it's a beautiful fuchsia. If you've not got this, please do get it. Think about the moths. Think about the other insects, but think about the moths. They will thank you forever for this. There are so many species of moths as well, so many different types. You know, there's a lot more types of moth than there are butterflies. We focus on the beauty of the butterflies, but you just take time to look at the moths that you see in your garden and the beauty that they bring. They're so beautiful in their own right, and they will thank you for having this shrub in your garden. So anyway, see the link for that. Also, Leucanthemum. Now I know that Paul's planted some over there, the lovely yellow that you've just seen, but these are the more traditional white variety. And these are ones that Mum and Dad used to have in their garden for a long time, some in the front, some at the back of the house as well. These are truly gorgeous, and Leucanthemum is one of those plants that, you know, it's worthy. It's a daisy, just look at it. It's gorgeous. It just fills you with hope and anticipation, and it makes me feel really happy. It truly does. Thank you for following me on my little garden tour today. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It's time now for Paul to show you his vegetables.
So it's now time for my little tour, and this is of the vegetable garden. So this is the raised bed, and we had a bit of a rejig. We had a lot of the veg starting to bolt, which simply means it's starting to run to seed. So things like the spinach and some of the Swiss chard was running to seed. So we ate them out, we harvested what we could. We took out the spring onions, they were ready to harvest, and we replanted a lot of the smaller plugs we had, which were growing in the previous video last month. So we planted them in. So we did this around maybe a fortnight ago. And what's happened since, because we've had so much rain in July, it's literally been a washout, literally. And the slugs have been doing what they do, munching through everything. And unfortunately, a lot of the small plugs have been eaten. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. They've not been eaten out of all existence, fortunately. Rather than giving up and just accepting that they've won, what I'm trying to do is I've been saving some plastic bottles, and this is going back to what I used to do many years ago when I used to grow a lot of slug-prone plants, and that is just take the tops and the bottoms off a plastic bottle. These are just water bottles, and I've just created a physical barrier around the plants. Now these plants are small enough for us to be able to do that. If you do have larger plants, just try larger bottles. Go for the 2 litre ones and just use them as a protective barrier against the slugs. So I'm hoping eventually we'll drink enough water and we'll be able to cover a lot of these plants with those bottles. So at the moment we've still got the beetroot. Now the beetroot seems pretty much unaffected by the slugs, which is brilliant. We've got a row of kale, or 3 rows of kale there. We've got some radish there in there as well. We've put in some of the broccoli. So these are a small variety of broccoli, and again they've been ravaged by the slugs, but hopefully with the plastic bottles we will be able to salvage them. Another row of the radish, and then surprisingly enough at the very end we do have some Swiss chard, and that remains completely unaffected by the slugs. So if all else fails and this all completely goes and gets eaten, what we will do is just fill up more with the things that we know the slugs won't eat, things like the Swiss chard. And there is time to grow still in August, lots and lots of plants. August is a great month for sowing a lot of your salads, and they will continue to grow up until the winter time, providing we don't get too much frost. And also if you do have cloches or protective ways of bringing those indoors, they will continue to crop all through the winter. Things like radishes, which are very quick to mature, they're great to be sowing in August as well. Also things like your Swiss chard, your spring onions, a lot of plants really that you've been growing in the previous months, you still can get growing. There's cabbages, there's broccoli. It's just knowing that you might need to be providing some protection over the winter time just to be able to harvest more crops as we're going into the cooler seasons. But these will hopefully be okay once I get the whole thing cornered off with these plastic bottles. It's just a physical barrier that hopefully the slugs will think, oh, I can't get through that, I can't get around it, I'll go on to something else. Unfortunately we've not been that successful with our peas. It's been a particular bad year for us for peas. The slugs have been up the wall, they've been eating the peas, but also it's been particularly wet last month. And peas, although they do like a lot of water, when they start to go like a yellowy kind of colour, the leaves, it's showing you that potentially you've either got a deficiency in nutrients, or more likely, in our case with all the rain we had in July, that there was just too much rain. And there was a couple that I pulled out and literally the roots had rotted. There was virtually no root on them at all. So we did harvest maybe a couple of crops of peas last month, but it's not doing that good. I have planted some more. There are some smaller ones just towards the back. Now it's hopefully going to be okay, so long as the slugs don't get hold of them. There has been some cropping of the dwarf French beans. This is just one example here. And we have got a couple of harvests of those as well. So they've been okay. But again, the slugs are getting hold of them and they're looking in a terrible way. So unfortunately, nature has taken its course and we're just trying to adapt and trying to get the best out of what we can and trying to salvage anything we can do. With regards to carrots, I knew that I tried twice in this bed to grow carrots and the slugs just took them completely to the ground. So I placed them in a container. So these are the ones I placed in a container, and overnight somehow the slugs climbed up the wall of this container and got in it. But I've now placed that onto a table where the slugs hopefully won't be able to get up to, and there is some fresh growth starting to appear in the centres. So although some of the older leaves have been eaten, there is some hope with these. These will probably be okay so long as they're kept out of reach of the slugs. So just moving further along, I'm just going to take you further down. So if you remember that I planted a cucumber in a container that I was hoping to grow up this obelisk. So this is that same cucumber. We've had so far a few cucumbers off it and they've tasted divine. There's nothing like a homegrown cucumber. They're so much nicer and so much more flavoursome than the ones you buy in the shops. So this one has more fruit coming. You can see the little cucumbers forming there. And what I've been doing with this is just, when they get to about that big, I've just been harvesting them and eating them as part of our salads. And that's been working really well. Our tomatoes, this variety is Mini Bell. There's lots and lots of fruit. As yet, none have actually become ripe yet. We've had a lot of rain, a lot of cloud during last month. It's not been great sunshine for ripening fruit, but hopefully now August is in, we should get some of that summer back. We have some more carrots in this container, so these haven't been affected so far. And with regards to growing things in pots that are susceptible to slugs, it's always wise just to pick them up every now and again and just make sure there's none hiding in the rims or underneath. That one's fine. We've got some salads growing in one, and we've also got some of these cabbages that are still growing. They've not been harvested yet, they're not ready. Now further along we'll go to our main crops of tomatoes. So these are our main tomato plants growing in these fabric containers, and as you can see we do have quite a bumper harvest on these. So these ones here are Moneymaker, and these have done brilliantly. There's quite a large number of fruits on each truss and still some more to be formed. And then just next to that we have the Cordy Boo, which is the beefsteak one. Now I did say when I planted these there may be an issue with regards to the stake being kept in place, and there is a bit of an issue with that, and we've just tied a bit of twine to the fence to stop them from flopping over. And the actual fruits of these, as you can see, are looking really good. They have these really weird and wonderful shapes. It looks like there could be a number of tomatoes, but in actual fact it's like just one that has multiple lobes on it. So they're quite fascinating. But one thing I've realised with regards to these fast fabric pots is that they're really good at keeping the plants in place. When we had last year a lot of plants in containers, because these can dry out really quick, they used to fall over in the wind. I've not had any problems whatsoever with these, with them falling over. The only thing I've had to do, like I've said, is they've been staked, and we're also making sure that those have been kept with twine so they don't fall too far over with the weight of the actual tomatoes. So they're growing really well. And now we're getting into August time. Still remember to keep nipping out the side shoots, which I do keep trying to do, so there's not that many on these now. And it's also a good idea as we get into August to start nipping out the top. If you look at these small fruits here, we might not be able to get enough of the season left once we get into September time and the weather starts to cool down to get these to mature and to ripen. So in some instances what I will be doing is just taking out the tops. So taking the plant back, right the way back to where the truss with the fruit is that's growing, and just chopping that whole bit off. And that will just allow all the energy to be diverted into getting these to mature and getting these to ripen, rather than trying to do a lot of smaller tomatoes. And the last thing we want is at the end of the season, when the cooler weather comes, is to have a lot of tomatoes that are not ripe. So I know in other parts of the country, other countries even, you do get a lot more sunlight, and obviously by taking out the tops you are reducing your crop of tomatoes. But because we live in England and our summers are notoriously unpredictable, like this one has been, and we've had lots of rain, like I've said, last month, and hopefully August will be a bit drier and a lot sunnier and warmer. So it's a debate whether you want to take the tops off or not. We probably will do that in a week or so. We'll just see how they're going. I mean, things like this one here, that's only just getting its flowers on. So that's going to mean that there's no chance that that's going to produce fruit that's going to ripen and mature in the time we have left of the season and the warm weather. So that will have to come off at some point. But we do have a lot of fruit, and I'm very pleased. And we are continuing to feed these with the comfrey feed, probably once a fortnight, and that just gives them all the energy they need to have these fruits being produced and ripen. So that's all the tomatoes. So in terms of our vegetable plot for August, I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm going to cover as much as I can with the plastic bottles to form a physical barrier, and just see how those progress. And we'll come back in September on the next one and we'll show you where we're up to.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Mad About Gardening. It's a very special one. August is such a wonderful month. There's so much happening in the garden, and we get the beautiful days like this, or for the most part we do anyway.
We're hoping that all that rain in July is a distant memory, and August is going to be a really nice month with some lovely weather, so we can all enjoy our gardens and enjoy all the plants that we're growing as well. If you have any questions or any comments, please drop them in the comments box below. And if you do want to subscribe, if you've not already done so, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help.
Thank you also for coming on my garden tour. I really enjoy giving you a little tour of the garden during each episode, so thank you for that.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Take care.